So today I'm going to be playing Berserk on the Atari 2600. Berserk is a game where you run around a maze and shoot robots. The maze is endless, by the way, it doesn't actually end. You also can't touch the walls, and if you spend too long in a maze, a red face named Evil Odd will chase you. It can be kind of difficult to shoot robots, but the game is pretty fun despite that. I wouldn't say this game's worth much, but if you can get it for like maybe $2, I would say it's kind of worth it. That's all I really have to say about this game. And here I died. Anyway, I'll see you guys next time. Well, I just found a glitch in this game, and I just booted it up, and now... this is not normally supposed to happen here. Let's see if I can get this... Oh, there it goes this time. I think we're all familiar with the Atari 2600. It was not the first ever console to exist, but it was the first majorly popular one. It offered consumers the way to play the arcades in their own homes. I do have a handful of these ports. However, these ports were usually not perfect. They had different things about them compared to the arcade, like different speeds or different enemy movements. These, made these not so perfect ports. And not to mention, you can get you can get perfect arcade ports on different systems nowadays. And this only just begs the question, do these ports still hold up? Well, let's start with Dig Dug. Dig Dug, like pretty much all Atari games, is a round-based game. The goal in each round is to kill all the enemies, either by dropping rocks on them or stabbing them with a pump and pumping them up till they explode. A lot of options sounds incredibly violent, but hey, whatever solves your problems. When it comes to gameplay, it is nearly identical to the arcade, which is kind of impressive. I mean, it plays almost exactly how it does in the arcade. I'll give this port a 3 out of 5. There are still better ports of this game, making this one obsolete, but kudos for the port. Next up is Pac-Man. Now, I said that most Atari ports always have minor differences compared to their arcades. However, Dig Dug was the exception because it was pretty much a perfect arcade port. Pac-Man is also an exception, not because it's a perfect port, it's because it's a terrible port. The biggest problem is that the game does not have the same flow as the arcade, and the flow is terrible. I can't put my finger on it, but I think it's because that the dots you need to collect are spread out more, so you're not collecting them as fast, killing some of the satisfaction, not helped by the terrible sound effects. Point is, the port is terrible even for the time. This gets the first 1 out of 5 in this series. Up next is Mario Bros. That's right, Mario on Atari. Okay, so this is what I expect from this system. The controls are a bit floaty and slippery compared to the NES version, but it's perfectly fine, but you're better off with the NES version. I'll give this a 2 out of 5. Finally is Space Invaders. It's about the same quality as Mario Brothers. It's a decent port, but it's not a perfect port. One eye is that once the invaders reach your barriers, they just disappear. They don't get chiseled away. However, you can counter this with 2 shots. There's actually a glitch in this version where if you hold down the reset button, shut down the game, and start it up again, and release the reset button, bam, you got double firepower, motherfucker. Anyways, this port is okay, but nothing special. Another 2 out of 5. That's 4 Atari games that I own. None of them are really worth playing, but for 4-year-old games, they're not bad.
What makes it even more aggravating is the fact that it's almost a good game.
Almost? I don't even know why I bought this game. I think it was because I was able to get in the full case and that Mike Mate's video got me curious. It also was like $2 at Play and Trade. That's the same place I got my Game Boy, by the way. And if you want to go there to get good deals, sadly they went out of business several years ago. God damn it, Amazon. Anyways, is this still worth the $2 I paid for it? Well, it depends on how much it holds up. Now, this is based off the 1990s Tasmanian show about the Looney Tune character Taz. I don't know anything about the show, but we don't need to know anything about the show to enjoy the game. The story is very simple. There's this giant bird that lays eggs and can feed a whole family, and Taz, only caring about food, goes to commit child murder, theft, and cannibalism. Okay, maybe the story's a little darker than I initially thought, but let's just get to the gameplay. Actually, I'll just reenact my initial reaction to the first level. Okay, here we go. Okay. Okay, here we go. And it looks like we got a new power. I wonder what this does. Oh, that's cool. Okay, wait, am I in quicksand? What? You can't be serious. I didn't even know I was in quicksand. Okay, let's try this again, maybe. Yeah. Okay, just button mash through it. Okay, what's this do? Oh, hey, extra life. Okay, now let's see where this takes me. What? Okay, first off, why is there momentum in this game? Mario and Sonic have momentum, but in those games, especially Sonic, you move really fast in those games. Here, you just walk. It makes the controls feel more sluggish. You can also spin, and I know I just complained about the slow walking, but man, this is too fast. Like, level design and camera are not designed around this speed. Speaking of which, as you might have guessed from my reaction, the level design is full of cheat tricks, and there are a lot of them in this game. But there are also these bombs that take away half your health, and they're everywhere. It might be so bad, but they use them for gotcha moments like putting them behind foregrounds or just tricky spots to avoid. Also, at times, the level design is just illogical. You've seen that one of the water pills leads to a death trap, but the one after that is required to beat the level. You also have to take leaps of faith, it's not always clear where you have to go, and it's not always clear what hurts you. Bottom line, there's a lot of trial and error. However, once you know what to do, the game does get noticeably better, and you know what, the graphics are not great, but I imagine they are like the cartoon, and Taz's animations are fun to watch. The music is bad, but is tolerable. It uses gems, which is kind of funny because the developers of this game, Recreational Brainware, also create gems. This is the only game that they ever developed. I suppose if you were a kid in 1992 and you had this in Sonic 2, I suppose this would have been adequate enough, and like I said, if you figure things out and put up with it, it does get a little better. However, I recommend that you don't put up with it and play Sonic 2 instead. I mean, it doesn't get that much better to make it worthwhile. With that said, I'll give this a 1 out of 5. It's just not very good, and I don't care if you're out of business and I paid $2 for this. I want my money back, Playing Trade. Give me back my money! I'm back with another Atari 2600 game, Missile Command. Missile Command was probably made during the height of the Cold War, at least with nuclear tensions, but the goal of the game is for you to simply shoot down nuclear missiles heading towards cities. I was never a fan of the arcade game, but I do enjoy this port a bit better than the arcade actually, which is something I don't say too often with Atari 2600 games. But I wouldn't necessarily call this an enlightening experience. Again, if you could get it for fairly cheap, I would say it's worth it. And thankfully most Atari games are fairly cheap, at least 2600 games are. Alright, it's a double review of Pilot Wings and F-Zero on the Super Nintendo. Pilot Wings is really just a series of flying mini-games. It is more just a tech demo for the Mode 7 graphics. I'm not really a fan of this game, but I'll just say it's not for me because I know there are people who do like this game. F-Zero is also a tech demo for Mode 7. This time, it's a futuristic racing game, which is something I can get behind. It's actually pretty fun, but it can be pretty difficult. This game hasn't aged great, but it's still enjoyable. Now for another review. Today I am doing Virtual Racing for the Genesis. Virtual Racing is a 3D racing game for the Genesis. It uses a SVP chip to achieve 3D graphics. They aren't great, but it looks cool for the Genesis. The gameplay is okay. The gameplay is smooth, but it isn't anything too amazing. There's only 3 tracks, but it's still kind of fun. Now, some of you are wondering, what the hell is this? This is Out of This World for the Super Nintendo, and that's a very appropriate name because this game is weird. It was originally titled Another World when it was originally released in Europe, and that's what all re-releases call it nowadays, and yes, there are re-releases. It's even been ported to the Nintendo Switch. The game was created on a Commodore Amiga, but it quickly found itself being ported to every system. The Sega Genesis, Sega CD, 3DO, DOS, and the version I'm looking at today, the Super Nintendo version. I originally learned about this game back in 2011. ScrewAttack did a video called Top 20 Genesis Game, and this game was on the list. And I quickly looked up a video about it, and I found Cube X55's long play of the game. The channel is now called World of Long Play, but anyways, the game is actually kind of important because it was created by one guy, and if nothing else, Hideo Kojima said that this was one of the 5 games that actually inspired him, so, yeah. Once you get past the title screen, the game starts with a full motion cutscene. Okay, that's pretty neat to see on the Super Nintendo. Anyways, Lester is working on a science experiment when lightning strikes, causing him to be transferred to another world. You quickly meet the world's inhabitants, who are not quite friendly. You meet an alien buddy who helps you bust out of jail, and now you must escape. The game presents its story with full motion cutscenes, kind of like a modern video game. The smooth animation isn't just present in the cutscene, all the animation during the game is super smooth. The graphics are super simple, but that's what makes them look cool. Now, as you can tell from the gameplay first, it's a cinematic platforming game. The movement is a bit stiff, but nothing too bad. However, my biggest complaint is the control layout. Now, jumping has its own button. However, shooting and running are mapped to the same button. This can be frustrating as I go to put up a shield, but I need to move forward a little to shoot without shooting my shields. But I sprint past my shield and get myself shot. It makes combat feel like a crapshoot sometimes, and sometimes it still is. And without the control issues. It's one of those games where it's one hit and you're dead kind of games. Also, it's not obvious what you have to do sometimes. Like, if I don't shoot this, I can't progress. So, have a guide ready. This might sound like my last review, however, fear not because you have unlimited lives and checkpoints are frequent, which is something you don't see that often in a Super Nintendo game, or a crappy bad game. It's more like a modern video game. I recommend using a guide as stated, but I also recommend you play this in short bursts. There is no battery save, but there is a super convenient password. The music is pretty good, but this is where the versions differ. Now, the SNES version holds up pretty well to the original Amiga version, although the SNES version does have an area that the original Amiga version doesn't have. The original Amiga version has little music in it. Pretty much all console versions added a lot of music to the game, and each version is different. Although the Super Nintendo version is a pretty good port for the time, it's not the best. That goes to the Sega CD version, as it uses the CD quality music to create the best soundtrack out of them all. There is also the recent Switch port, which has a save system, level select, difficulty settings, new graphics, a remaster of the original soundtrack, and a console soundtrack. Which is a bit confusing because, like I said, there are several console versions. It's a Sega CD version, by the way. Once again, there are better alternatives out there, but when it comes to gameplay, at its core, it's identical. With that said, I'll give the Super Nintendo version a 4 out of 5. Once again, there are technically better alternatives out there, but when it comes to gameplay, this one is perfectly fine. In fact, I would say that this game was actually a little ahead of its time. Today I am looking at the Famicom version of Tetris. It's Tetris. However, I guess I can't be that lazy. It's different than the one we know. The history behind this game is kinda complicated. This game is not a great version of Tetris. The game uses one button, and that's to drop the pieces. Guess what? You use the down arrow to flip the pieces. I know this is one of the earliest versions of Tetris, but what lunatic thought this was a good idea? Yeah, just stick with the NES version we all know. Klonoa 2. Never heard of it? Well, Namco was never very good at marketing these games. Klonoa was a short-lived series that was intended to be a second mascot. However, Namco was also accused of never marketing these games very well. As a result, pretty much all the games sold very poorly. Ironically, the first game goes for a lot on Amazon and eBay, but according to Namco, it is the only one to actually have sold fairly well. It was enough to convince Namco to make a sequel. Hence Klonoa 2. Klonoa 2 will come out very early in the PlayStation 2's life. However, due to poor marketing, the game didn't sell very well. The sales weren't necessarily abysmal, but it was not a success for Namco. The Klonoa series were going to have 2 GBA games and a remake for the Wii, and that was about it. Years later, Klonoa 2 were gaining a cult following, and eventually Namco would release the first game on the PS3 and Vita, and the 2 GBA games will be released on the Nintendo Wii U's Virtual Console. However, Klonoa 2 has not been given a re-release, so if you want to buy this game, you have to get the original copy. This game isn't balls to the wall expensive, but still, you have to throw down quite a bit of money if you want to play this game. Or you could just emulate it. But anyways, is Klonoa 2 worth tracking down? Well, it once again asks the only question we ask on this show: does it still hold up? The story takes place soon after Klonoa 1. Klonoa is a dream traveler. Klonoa enters a dream that is desperate for help as it's being invaded by evil monsters. Klonoa meets up with Lolo and Puka. Together they set up to ring 4 bells to help rid the world of darkness. The plot is mostly character driven, but I find a lot of these characters kind of forgettable. They have their moments, but it's kind of generic. It's not overall bad, just kind of meh. The graphics are not great, but considering that this is an early PS2 game, it's not bad. The environments do look kind of nice at least. However, the gameplay is where this game shines. Klonoa 2 is a 2.5D game. You can move left and right and jump. You can also float in the air, which serves as a double jump, but also as a triple jump. This is where Klonoa's main mechanic comes in. You can grab enemies with Klonoa's ring, and I guess Klonoa takes up in the art of inflation by Dig Dug, as that is what Klonoa does with his enemies. Well, that's one way to solve your problems. Actually, that's how you solve every problem in this game. Klonoa is actually more of a puzzle platformer than an action one. There is some action in this game. You can throw enemies at other enemies, but you can also use them to do a double jump. You often have to use this ability to progress. The puzzle is when to use the right ability at the right time. This may sound very simple, but there are enemies that have different functions when you grab them, and each stage has its own gimmick, so it never gets boring. There are also sliding levels which are kind of fun and help add variety. The boss fights are well done. Again, they're kind of like a puzzle. You gotta dodge their attacks and figure out when's the best time to strike. The only real complaint I have is that some of these levels go on a bit too long. There are also limited lives and they are saved to your save file, but honestly, you'll never game over in this game. The game is somewhat easy. Even if you lose a life, it seems that you get at least 2 more in between deaths. Otherwise, this game is very satisfying to play. So yeah, if you can get your hands on this game, I highly recommend it. That may not be easy, but this game is really underrated. With that said, I'll give this the first 5 out of 5 in this whole series. So with that, I'm still waiting for this to be ported to the Switch. Today is going to be The Revenge of Shinobi on the Sega Genesis. Revenge of Shinobi is an action side-scrolling game that came out fairly early in the Genesis's life. The game is fairly hard but fair as it does feel tactical. The game's controls feel tight, which is good as you need to move fast if you want to get anywhere in this game. Your shurikens have a limited use, but if the enemies get too close, you will use a melee attack instead. If you have a Genesis, this might be a game you might want to check out, even with the somewhat high difficulty level. As long as you bring some skill or keep trying, the game can be a lot of fun. The music by Yuzo Koshiro is really enjoyable. It adds a lot of enjoyment to this game. This time I am looking at Tetris Effect on the PS4. It's Tetris. However, there is a bit more to it with this game. The biggest addition is the presentation. It has this spiritual ambience that reacts to the gameplay, if that makes any sense. It's pretty amazing, and it makes what's essentially another version of Tetris feel more. However, some effects I do feel are a little hard on the eyes, and $40 at launch was maybe a little too much. You can also play in VR, but I wouldn't say that's much of a PSVR selling point. In fact, it's been recently re-released on the Oculus Quest. That goes for about $30. Now that's a more reasonable price. You can also buy it for $20 on the PS4 brand new today. At that price, it is worth it. For some reason, Rambo's head here is ripped off. Maybe the previous owner of this game really hated it and ripped Rambo's head off? I'm beginning to see why. You know, when I look into retro consoles, I always hear about the NES, Sega Genesis, PlayStation. And you know what? I'm kind of sick of it. I mean, I want to learn about the Atari 7800, the Odyssey 2, and the Sega Master System. Well, I do have a power-based converter that lets me play Sega Master System games on my Genesis. Unfortunately though, not for my Model 2, but it does work on the Retron 5. I only own one game for the Sega Master System, and that is Rambo, First Blood Part 2. Now, if you want to get into Sega Master System collecting, this might ask the question, should I get this game? Well, once again, it asks the question, does it still hold up? Rambo is an overhead running gun which fits with the character. The game at first loosely follows the film. The first 4 level aesthetics do match the film's settings, however the 5th level is you rampaging through a city. Did they get this mixed up with First Blood? And this level is, I don't know, I haven't watched the movie in a long time, but I don't remember this. You run through the game and shoot anything that moves. Actually, you crawl through the game as your movement speed is abysmal, and it makes dodging enemy fire very hard. When you die, you do get to reposition yourself before resuming, which is kind of nice, but I've had instances where I just die immediately. Your shots also have a very limited range, and trying to shoot your enemies puts you in harm's way, so it's actually easy to avoid your enemies as the enemies don't really seek you out, especially when you pass them. The game is more frustrating than fun, and I actually enabled infinite lives and I still didn't enjoy it. I don't understand how anyone would be able to beat this game without cheating. The game has co-op and that's really all what the game has going for it. I actually had some high hopes for this game, but I really didn't enjoy this game. So I'll just give this a 1 out of 5 I guess, and I don't recommend this game. On the back of the box it says, "And remember, you take no prisoners." That's technically a war crime. Now when I reviewed Space Invaders for the Atari 2600 on my Does It Still Hold Up show, there were a lot of things I missed out when talking about the Space Invaders port. There's actually quite a bit more to say, so I figured I'd just make a video talking about it. One thing I got wrong in the original review was that I claimed that you had to have the console on before holding on the reset button and then turning it off and then back on to get the glitch to work. In actuality, you just have to hold down the reset switch before turning the system on. And that's how you get the glitch to work. The main thing I neglected to talk about is that you can actually change the game modes in this version. For example, you can either have your cannon be bigger, you can have the barriers move, you can have the enemies shoot more aggressively, or you can have the enemies be invisible. This, to be fair, does give this version a bit more variety compared to the arcade version. And this might actually change the score from a 2 to a 3 because this does actually give the game a lot more variety, unlike the arcade. Anyway, that's really all I kind of have to say about this, so anyways, I'll see you guys next time. This is Sonic Classics for the Genesis. Now, Sonic Classic is a compilation of Sonic 1, 2, and Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. I have Sonic 1 and 2, but I don't have Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine by itself, so this is really my only way of playing it. This is a fairly good compilation. I believe this was a very late release and the system's like 95, 96, you know. So this was very likely just like kind of a budget price a little bit, like, you know, a way of selling older games. Anyway, this is Sonic 2 here. This is, you know, 1992 here, and as far as I'm aware, the game has not been changed in any way. This is a pretty good compilation, but the only caveat I found is that you can't use Sonic and Knuckles to play, you know, Sonic 2 and Knuckles. So that might be a bit of a disappointment to some, but otherwise, again, this is a really good compilation. One thing that interests me is if you hit the reset button, it will actually reboot Sonic 2. It won't reboot the whole compilation. The reset button has always kind of interested me. I mean, like I said right here, it just reboots the game, not the whole compilation. But another thing that's also interesting about the reset button is the X-Men game. As probably some of you are aware, there's actually a point in the game where you actually have to press the reset button to continue the game. And another thing I found was that in Mortal Kombat, if you enter the blood code and reset the Genesis, you actually don't have to re-enter the blood code. The blood code will just be automatically enabled when you reset the Genesis. So again, the reset button has always been something that's kind of interests me. But anyways, like I said, this is a fairly good compilation. If you can get your hands on it and you're a Genesis owner, I would say it's generally worth it. Anyway, that was another video. Thank you so much for watching. Oh man. I should have known I would find you here because this is where you belong. Wait, I can explain. Really? What are you even doing here? I killed you like 3 years ago. I'm not real. I only exist in your mind. That makes no sense. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, 3 years ago I killed this guy for harassing me. He was harassing me because I locked his younger brother in the closet. He's still in there, by the way. I haven't really noticed. Anyways, I locked his younger brother in the closet because he copyright striked one of my videos. And why did he copyright strike your video? It was an unfinished review of Sonic R from 2016. Look, ever since you didn't finish that review, we have existed in your head. If you want to get rid of us once and for all, you have to finish what you started. That still doesn't make any sense, but I want you out of my life once and for all, so let's do this. Well, let's finish what I've started. Sonic R. Does it still hold up? Well, technically this is Sonic's Gems collection, but it's a perfect port. And I'm going to be emulating it. Sonic R is a racing game. Almost everyone online hates this game. I actually somewhat enjoy this game. There are a lot of problems with this game. Some I can somewhat defend. One is the controls. It's classic tank controls along with an accelerate and brake button. On top of that, another problem is that you turn too slow and that there are turns that are difficult to do without slowing down. Now, this isn't as bad as it seems. These are basically driving controls except you can turn while you're standing still and jump. But since almost everyone is on foot, it's a little awkward. Although I will agree turning is a little too slow even with the best character. Also, I would agree that the tracks are not the most well designed. It's like the people who made these tracks designed them without knowing how the controls were laid out. There is also only 5 tracks, which is kind of dumb. There are more characters than tracks, and unlocking these characters may give the few tracks or the whole game more value. However, this creates another problem that is often criticized. The balancing is really bad. Sonic is probably the best, but there's also Super Sonic as an unlockable, which is pretty much cheat mode, and ironically fixes the slow turning issues. Then there is Amy, who just sucks at everything. However, honestly, I still find enjoyment in this game despite all its problems. The graphics are quite impressive when considering the Sega Saturn's hardware. The music, as everyone has said, does not fit the game, but honestly, I kind of find it a guilty pleasure of mine. It does add enjoyment to this game. Now, there is no reason for you to buy Sonic R by itself, but what I can recommend is Sonic Gems Collection. Sonic Gems Collection is a follow-up to Sonic's Mega Collection. Although not quite as good as Mega Collection, Gems Collection is still fairly solid. It has some good games on it, just not as many as Sonic Mega Collection Plus. I would recommend this if you enjoyed Sonic's Mega Collection. So with that, I give Sonic R a 2 out of 5. It's problematic, but it's kinda fun. And I would give Sonic's Gems Collection a 4 out of 5. It's fairly good, but it's a bit lacking compared to Sonic Mega Collection. Oh, he's gone. I guess I finally cleared the sins of my 2017 YouTube videos. I guess now I can move on. Now, there is one more episode I have to do for this show, and it is actually related to the first ever video I ever uploaded to YouTube. F-Zero X is faster and more intense than the first game. The graphics are not in 3D. The graphics are simple, but is done to allow 30 racers on a track to twist and flip, and all runs at 60 frames per second. However, it's just as hard as the first game. However, it is a fun sort of hard. You have an N64 and you don't have this game? Why? What are you doing? It's more fun even with the N64's awful controller. This is a Game Boy box. This game right here in particular is Pac-Man. I was actually able to get my hands on a Game Boy game that comes in the cardboard box. That is something that's kind of hard to do because usually back then most people would just throw their cardboard boxes away. But so yeah, these are valuable collector's items because of that. As you can kind of tell, this box isn't quite in the best quality. The top here kind of wants to come off and it's a bit bent. This is what the back of the box looks like. It's just, you know, some description like Pac-Man's got the munchies, gobble, 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 whoa, munching power pellets. Okay, I'll stop reading that because that's kind of cringy, but anyway, so yeah, but another thing that's kind of cool is that usually even when you can get the box, usually getting it kind of like in full tact on the inside, if that makes any sense, it is somewhat rare. This is kind of what the game comes in. This is the cartridge itself, but I was even able even came with the manual because, I mean, that isn't something you don't get too often, and as you can kind of see, the manual looks pretty good. Like, so this is, I guess, what a traditional Game Boy manual looks like. It basically tells you how to play the game, get started, you know, all that. It looks like, yeah, this game does have 2-player, and you use the link cable. I find it weird because to my understanding it's just alternating multiplayer, so couldn't you simply just pass the Game Boy to the second player or something. But anyway, I thought that was pretty cool. There isn't a whole lot to say about this. I wanted to do a review for Pac-Man. However, I mean, it's just Pac-Man. However, I will talk about the game fairly quick. I mean, it's just Pac-Man. I'll say it's better than the Atari 2600 version, but that's a very low standard. It's a bit difficult, it's a bit hard to play like this, but yeah, I know the screen's a little hard to see, but I mean, again, it's just Pac-Man, I think we all know how to play it. You can also play in 2 camera modes. I just showed you the close-up mode, but there's also a full screen mode where you see everything here. However, the graphics are a bit weaker in this version. Again, it's not an overall bad port, but there really isn't a whole lot to say about it. I'm going to go on a quick tangent. That was actually a recreation of the first video I uploaded to YouTube. I'm going to assume the majority of you don't understand what I'm talking about, but back in 2013 I ran a channel called Jake Koner, and I still run it today. But sometime in 2014 I deleted all my videos from 2013. The first ever video I uploaded was called YouTube Capture Test. It was about a 20-second video of me capturing footage from this game. That game was Terminator for the Sega CD. However, I never talked about the game itself, so for the game that technically started my whole YouTube career, it's decent. However, I can't end the video like that, so for the final time this season, does it still hold up? Terminator is a run and gun game. The game follows the movie pretty well, mostly. In between levels is a cutscene which is just a poorly compressed scene from the movie while the Terminator theme plays. It, for some reason, reminds me of when I was 12 when I first saw the film. It turned out mostly okay, but anyways. The locations generally match the film's settings. This game is pretty fun, but it has problems, and these do hurt the overall experience. First, the controls are a little weird. You can only shoot diagonal while running. Second, I had problems with my controller inputs. This might be my controller or just badly timed jumps, but I had issues when I would fall off platforms when I tried to jump. It doesn't get me killed that often, but it's annoying when it happens. My biggest complaint is how easy it is to take damage. Every enemy takes several shots to down. However, they often shoot you while you're shooting at them. Health packs are frequent, and grenades, which you get a lot of by the way, are encouraged to be used on tougher enemies. However, running and gunning is still fairly fun, if flawed. The graphics are pretty good. The music sounds nothing like the movie, but that's okay because this soundtrack is awesome. You have to really love rock music to love this soundtrack, but man, I love it. Top 15 best video game soundtracks. It does add a ton of enjoyment to this game. The game is very simple, but that is what makes it decent. It's probably one of the better Terminator games considering the Terminator's track record with games. Like the film, the game is above average, but nothing absolutely amazing. With that said, I'll give this game a 3 out of 5. It's pretty decent. However, this game is expensive. I got mine for $10, but it goes for about $100 online. I don't think it's worth that much, but if you could find a cheap alternative, I would consider checking this game out. So, that concludes the first season of Does It Still Hold Up? Will I make more? Well, it depends on how well this whole season does, but I did have a lot of fun making them. And with that, I'll see you guys next time. Oh hey, apparently this is properly a blockbuster. Does anyone actually remember that? Anybody? Now, all these years I've spent on the internet have taught me several things. One of those things is that a lot of people love GoldenEye on the N64. However, what if I was to tell you that there's another James Bond game on the N64? However, don't get too excited. GoldenEye was developed by the beloved Rareware. This was published by EA and developed by Eurocom. If that doesn't mean that this game is automatically going to be bad. Could still be kind of fun. Maybe.
Afternoon, sir. Can I help you?
The name's Bond. James Bond.
Now, one thing I should say is that I never actually played the original GoldenEye. However, the game appears to play very similarly to it. The shooting in the game is actually kind of fun. However, this is not a simple run to point A to point B type of games. The levels are kind of open and expect you to accomplish specific tasks in certain orders. However, although the game was nice enough to tell me what objectives I need to accomplish, the game doesn't even bother giving me an idea of where I need to look for them. This makes the gameplay feel very frustrating. Really, I would just stick to GoldenEye over this. I remember playing the multiplayer mode a few years ago, and I remember it was kind of fun, so at least there's that. But that's all I really can give this game. Today, I am doing a quick review of Miss Pac-Man on the Game Gear. Also, yes, I finally cut my hair. Miss Pac-Man on the Game Gear feels very similar to Pac-Man on the Game Boy. Like that version, you can swap between a close-up for more detail or a zoom out. The thing with Miss Pac-Man is that it plays a lot faster than the original Pac-Man. However, this version plays fairly slow to the point where it just feels like regular Pac-Man. Now, maybe it's just I suck, but I have problems getting Miss Pac-Man to go where I want to. This led to some frustrating deaths. Again, it could just be me. But really, you're better off with really any other version of Pac-Man than this version. It's not overall bad, it's just there's no reason to play this today. Alright, I am looking at Super Mario Deluxe for the Game Boy Color. Super Mario Deluxe is basically an updated version of the original Super Mario Bros. There are a few downgrades like how the camera is zoomed in. Also, I don't feel that the controls are exactly one-to-one with the original. They seem a bit more floaty in this case. Also, it's the original Super Mario Bros. Now, there's not necessarily anything wrong with that, but the original hasn't exactly aged well, even compared to some of the other Mario games on the original system. However, there are a few features that are kind of nice. One, there's a save system. Another is that you can actually play as Luigi. He controls how he always does, high jump but bad traction. There's multiplayer and extra challenges you can play. And you can even unlock the Japanese sequel. I mean, I suppose if you have a Game Boy Color, it is worth checking out. I don't think it's really worth going extremely out of your way to play. It's an overall nice edition of the original, at least. So, I guess I'm making another... Congratulations, Jay Conner! You have been approved to do a second season of Does It Still Hold Up? Yes! Yes! Okay, I'm actually going to be doing things a little bit differently this season. One, I might actually drop the name altogether, just because really they're no different than reviews. The only thing I'm going to change about my reviews, though, is I'm actually going to add the review scale I used in the actual show. And also, unlike Season 1 where I made all the episodes and then posted them, here I'm just going to release the episodes when I'm finished with them. So, what am I going to be reviewing today? Whiz! Ah, fuck! Whiz was developed by the infamous Flare Software and published by the infamous Titus. But maybe this game still might be good. It was released in 1996. The game is an isometric game. You're on a time limit. Okay, not too bad. However, we got the awkward isometric controls where pressing up moves you upright. You also can't move diagonally in this game at all. What's more problematic is that you move very fast in this game. To be fair, it is manageable after a while. The levels themselves are kind of interesting. You actually have several paths you can take to the goal. The time limit itself isn't that big of a problem. From what I've seen, as long as you keep moving and remembering where you were, the basic skill levels essentially, the timer shouldn't be too much of a problem. Dead ends usually give you more time or a power-up you need to get through certain barriers. You also have to deal with enemies, but the thing that sucks about them is that there are no invincibility flames when you get hit. It's not overall bad. You can fight back with a somewhat reliable spin move. Wait a minute. Oh, come on! Even with all of that, the awkward controls and just the fact that you have a somewhat strict time limit kinda makes this game feel a little rough. I don't want to call this an overall bad game, but really there is no reason to play this. With that logic, that means that this is a 2 out of 5. It's worth noting that after doing some research, I found that there's actually several versions of this game. There's a DOS, Amiga, PlayStation, and Sega Saturn version of this game. The only thing I found worth knowing is that the PS1 Sega Saturn version actually has some pretty nice music. However, it's also worth knowing that the Super Nintendo version, the one I just reviewed, is actually the only one to come out in North America. That's really the only interesting information I could find about this game. Remember Klonoa 2? I talked about it a month or two ago. It was a great game, but it sold very poorly. Well, after Klonoa 2, Namco started to downsize Klonoa a little bit. Not only did they move Klonoa to the GBA, but they also did some reboot, I think. Thus Klonoa Empire of Dreams, the first Klonoa game on the GBA. This is sort of a sequel to a Klonoa game on the WonderSwan, as the layout of the game is very similar. However, despite this, Namco still didn't market the game very well. The result was that Klonoa Empire of Dreams sold even worse than Klonoa 2. However, if you want to buy this game, the pricing of this game is... actually, I don't know. It generally goes for about $24, but I have seen offers that were lower than that. The game, at the very least, was re-released on the Wii U, but does it still hold up? The game is a reboot of the series, as the continuity between this and Klonoa 2 doesn't quite add up. The story is that Klonoa was having dreams. However, Klonoa gets arrested and is brought to the Empire. Turns out dreams are illegal in this kingdom and viewed as worthless. Klonoa refuses to accept that, and Klonoa is offered a challenge to rid the kingdom of its problems. However, Klonoa and his partner Hubel discover that a lot of the problems originated by dreams, so they have to figure out what's really going on. The cutscenes are amazing, very dynamic and fun to watch. The graphics as a whole are excellent for GBA standards. The core mechanics of Klonoa 1 and 2 are still here. You can grab enemies to throw or use them as a double jump. Again, that's one way to solve your problems. You can still float as well. Some enemies have different reactions when you grab them. However, the overall layout has changed. Like Klonoa 2, the game is a puzzle action game. However, there are more puzzles here than Klonoa 2. There are 5 worlds. Instead of fewer longer levels, Empire of Dreams has main levels but are shorter. I actually like this over Klonoa 2. However, instead of going from one location to the next, you have to collect 3 stars throughout the level in order to open the exit. The puzzle is figuring out how to get to these items. There are less enemy types in the previous game, but there are blocks which do add a bit more variety to the puzzles. However, repetition does set in a little, but it's still fun. There are also 1 slime level and 1 auto-scrolling level in each world. These are completely optional unless you want to unlock the extra levels. Boss fights are not as fun as before. They seem to be more designed to show off the GBA's capabilities, but honestly, these are the weakest part of the game for me. However, the game is overall enjoyable and highly recommended. I give this a 5 out of 5, just like Klonoa 2. So I've been playing video games for almost 15 years. Now I'm going to review every single game I have played growing up, because I feel like it. Now, like a lot of people, my first ever system was the PlayStation 2. Now, honestly, I can't remember all the exact details of when my family got the system. I just remember it kind of showed up one day in October 2005, I think. According to my father, he just bought it at GameStop one day and just bought a whole bunch of games for it. Now, if you actually would believe it or not, I was never that interested in games when I first got the system. It didn't stop me from trying it out. But it wouldn't be about till my birthday of 2006 when I really started getting into video games. Now, like I said, my father bought a bunch of games when he first got the system. However, I believe that the first ever video game I played on the system was Namco 50th Anniversary. At least I think this is the first game I played. If nothing else, I will review some of the other games that we got for the system. Anyways, how is Namco Museum 50th Anniversary? As you might have guessed, this is a compilation of Namco arcade games from the 80s. A lot of the games here are what you expect from almost every Namco compilation. There's Pac-Man, Miss Pac-Man, Dig Dug, Pole Position 1 and 2, Galaga, and so on. Most are early 80s games. There are a few exceptions like Dragon Spirit. There are 2 games you have to unlock. And why is Galaxian here when there's Galaga? It's like inviting your ex-wife to a family reunion. Good thing I don't have an ex-wife. Although I don't have a wife in general. The presentation is really good. The 80s licensed music is fitting. Overall, the selection is good and it keeps this reasonably aged. But I don't really know how long that will last, considering that Namco compilations keep constantly being released. I'll give this a 4 out of 5. This is why I gave the Atari ports of Pac-Man and Dig Dug low ratings, because you can pretty much play them all right here. Now before I review Oddworld Adventures, I like to look at the box. I did this for Pac-Man, but here I was actually able to get this brand new off of Amazon. It was about 30 bucks. So this is again what a Game Boy box looks like. This is the front and this is the back here. Apparently this is Super Game Boy compatible, but from what it seems all it does is really just kind of changes the color palette from, I guess, black and green to white and brown. Anyways, here's the description. Don't get mad, get odd. Now another thing I like to do is take a look at the inside of the box because it's in a bit more of a complete state than the Pac-Man box here. So this is where the game is stored. It appears that each Game Boy game comes with a little plastic casing here. My copy of Pac-Man didn't have one. So yeah, it comes in this thing. And another thing I found interesting is that like Pac-Man, I got the manual, but I also got a bunch of other things as well. I mean, first I got the manual itself right here. It's kind of interesting. And here's advertisements for a, it looks like a Beavis and Butthead video game. There's also seems to be like this health and safety manual. It's a bit more. It's not quite the same layout here, but it's basically just like, I guess, don't use your Game Boy in this situation. I haven't really been looking at it. Another thing is that there's actually a Nintendo Power advertisement right here, and it looks like you can easily subscribe by giving you a number and telling you the price. It's kind of cool, I suppose. Again, Nintendo Power isn't around, so I doubt this would really work. But I wonder if, like, maybe if if I actually used the number that was given like back in like, I don't know, 2010, back when Nintendo Power was still a thing. I wonder if it would still work. But again, Nintendo Power has been discontinued for some time. And lastly, it comes with like a bit of like, basically this would mail to GT Interactive. I don't know what we're having because GT Interactive hasn't been around for a while. Apparently they were like they became Atari or something, but yeah, I'm not quite sure what happened then. And Atari also went bankrupt in the future, so yeah. But yeah, I suppose you mail this in, you like put in your like it's kind of a bit of a survey so the company can get feedback, so you know, that kind of stuff. But anyways, let's review the game now. This game perplexes me. Not because this is an Oddworld game, but the game itself. First off, the B button jumps, but this is a Game Boy remake of Oddworld's Abe's Odyssey on the PlayStation. It tries to include almost all the mechanics from the PS1 game, possession, stealth, game speak, etc. Yet rather than include all of the general PS1 game, it only includes the Paramite Trials, which was about 1/6 of the PlayStation game. You travel to the Paramite Temple and do their trials, and after that I figured you would do the Scrap Trials because that's what you did in the original game. But no. You do more puzzles in the Paramount region and then the game just ends. It's like only including the Midgar section Final Fantasy. Oh. Yeah. Like every Oddworld game, the game isn't any normal game. It's ultimately a cinematic platformer. The controls are very slippery compared to the PS1 game. There's one-hit deaths and a lot more trial and error compared to the original. But checkpoints are common and there's an easy password system. But the game is only 30 minutes long. For Oddworld fans, it's interesting that this exists. For non-Oddworld fans, you're better off with the remake of Abe's Odyssey, new and tasty. I can only recommend this to Oddworld fans at a low price. Hey, did you guys know that Dig Dug 2 is a thing? You wanna know something else? Apparently Dig Dug 1 was never ported to the NES. Yet really Dig Dug 2 was. So yeah, Dig Dug 2 Trouble in Paradise. The game is different than Dig Dug 1. This game is an overhead arcade game. Like the first game, the goal is to kill all enemies. You still have the pump from the first game, but now you have a jackhammer to destroy parts of the island? Wait, what? I thought I was supposed to be saving Paradise, not destroying it. Wow, you have weird ways of solving your problems. At least Klonoa doesn't take up that from you. The jackhammer can be a bit tricky to use, so don't get too reckless with it. The game is just an endless high score game. Outside of the graphics, this plays identical to the arcade version, and considering that this game doesn't get ported a lot, this version holds up fairly well. As a game itself, it was kinda fun. I can at least kinda recommend that you check this out. I said that there were many games that my father bought when he got the PS2. Well, one of them is a game that probably almost none of you have ever heard of before. Hurdy-gurdy. Slightly dumb title aside, it's so weird knowing that this is one of the first video games I've ever played, and yet almost no one has really heard of it. Well, let's just see how well this holds up. I gotta give this game credit. It's not like any other game I've played before. The story is that Hurdy and his father are participating at a herding tournament. However, Gertie's father won't wake up. Gertie decides to go get help. 30 minutes of running around later, Gertie does get help from this wise guy. Turns out some jerk has the power to do bad stuff. However, he's in the tournament too, but if he loses the tournament, it means giving up his powers. So he puts Gertie's dad to sleep as he could lose to him. The only way Gertie can wake up his father is if Gertie takes this jerk's place. You know, I gotta give the game credit as the lore in this game is actually kind of interesting. A little. This is where we get into the main gameplay mechanic. Herding. Yes, herding. You need to get these creatures into these pens, but you gotta watch out for these pink beasts. They eat the creatures you're trying to herd. You need to herd a certain amount to progress, but if you mess up, you can restart the level. You collect tools to herd certain creatures, get to new areas, or just make herding easier. It's kinda like Zelda, just with herding. And yeah, this game can be kinda fun. So this game might sound interesting, right? Well... Okay, graphics for PS2 are good, but the colors do seem a little washed out. As you can also see, the frame rate is not that good. The camera can also be a bit problematic at times. This results in the game being kinda hard to navigate with only a mini-map to make things easier. This doesn't ruin the game, but it makes it feel kinda rough. Again, it can still be kinda fun. If nothing else, I think it makes this worth checking out if you're curious. If anything, I think this could be good if this was remastered. Hey, the art style in the manual is kinda cool. It actually does a pretty good job of telling the player how to herd certain creatures. Too bad I couldn't read back then. Even the back of the box is kinda cool. Apparently there's a website, but I looked it up. Apparently it just took me to some random website that holds Flash games that was pretty much defunct. So, Echo the Dolphin on Sega CD. Let's just get into it. Echo is surely a unique game. I mean, you play as a dolphin who must find his pod after a strange phenomenon. And let's just say it gets weirder than that. But there's no beating around the bush. Echo the Dolphin on the Sega Genesis is an example of a game that just doesn't age well. So, does the Sega CD version fare better? Actually, yes. I don't know all the details, but this version is changed a little to help make the game better. The most obvious being an actual checkpoint system. However, you still have to deal with slippery controls and trial and error. At least the music is a lot better. This version gives us nice ambient music rather than the Pink Floyd inspired Gems music from the Genesis version. This version is the better of the two if you really want to play this game, but it still hasn't aged well either. It doesn't help that the Genesis version is the one that gets all the re-releases.
Classics.
30 Activision Atari 2600 games. Not a bad deal. The thing about Activision Atari 2600 games is that they're usually never inferior arcade ports, so there is some reason to still play them today. Some of these games are fairly ambitious for their times, and most are just overall fun. The menus are also very nice. The only problem is that sound effects on some of these games were changed to have more realistic sound effects. That may not necessarily be bad, but there is no way to change them to the original from what I can tell. Otherwise, this is an excellent compilation. There is sort of a sequel about Intellivision games. In all three of my Game Gear console videos, I showed off Sonic 1, yet I never really talked about the game itself. Unlike Super Mario Land, Sonic 1 is based off the Genesis game of the same name, although like Super Mario Land, it's more of its own thing. At least this game has momentum, but Sonic's iconic speed is actually very limited in this game. There are some moments of speed and you still run fast, but Sonic 1 on the Game Gear is really just a standard platforming game. Although, an above average one. The level design is good for the most part, and the game is never boring. The graphics are also good, the music is excellent, possibly one of the best 8-bit musics of all time. This is definitely a good game, definitely worth checking out if you're curious. There is also a Master System version, and weirdly it was the last game on the Sega Master System to be released in North America. I'm going to start this video with a controversial statement. I like the Virtual Boy. Honestly, the Oculus Quest has given me a bit of an appreciation for it. Honestly, the Virtual Boy might have actually been ahead of its time when you consider that the Oculus Quest is pretty much the same thing. However, there were several reasons why the Virtual Boy failed. One of these is a whole bunch of lackluster games. This can be seen in the pack-in title for the Virtual Boy, Mario Tennis. I technically talked about this game in a video I'm not the most proud of.
Hey!
Although I think this joke's kinda funny. Mario Basketball, Mario Golf, and Mario Combat. Okay, I made that last one up. Anyways, the first Mario Tennis game. But honestly, you can remove the Mario theming from this game because it's just a standard tennis game. No power-ups, nothing. In fact, all you can really do is play singles or doubles matches. There's really not much content to this game. There are several playable characters, but all what they do is just change the backgrounds. The core gameplay is alright, but I found myself shutting off the game, not due to headaches. I never had an issue with the Virtual Boy's 3D, especially when you set it to the right settings. I'll even actually admit that the 3D is really good, but it takes so long to win a match. I just find myself getting bored of it. Supposedly you have to win 6 rounds to win, I think. Yeah, no thanks. With that, I'm still waiting for Mario Combat. Honestly, I could probably just sum up with what I said a few years ago. I suppose what is here is decent, it's just that there's not a lot here. On the NES, there were many companies that published unlicensed games for the system, the most popular being Tengen. They published several unlicensed arcade ports, even some from Sega. One of those was Alien Syndrome. Many consider this NES port better than the Master System version. One of this game's greatest strengths is simultaneous multiplayer. You run around a space station saving comrades and avoiding an endless spawning of aliens. You have to get out before the base explodes, and you have to fight a boss at the end. This game is kind of fun. There is a map that makes things easier. The game can be kind of hard, particularly with boss fights. If you have an NES and you want a 2-player game, yeah, I guess I can recommend this. But this isn't an outstanding game by any means. This game doesn't get ported a lot, so there's at least some reason to play this version. Again, it's supposedly better than the Master System version. Often held as the best version of the original SimCity, the Super Nintendo version is fairly decent. However, there are some drawbacks for being the first game and being an old game in general. I mean, look how long it takes to load a map. It's rare to see a Super Nintendo game that has to load, especially one that takes this long. The only other Super Nintendo game that I own that has to load is Out of This World, but that only takes 3 seconds. Once into the game, you must build a city. I never played the sequels, but I know that this is very simple compared to the other games. All you need is power lines and roads to build stuff. This may not be bad for some, and there is still some depth like taxes and approval. The presentation, if nothing else, is nice. The controls can be kind of awkward at first, but they are manageable. For a launch title, it's not bad. However, I have a feeling that there are better alternatives, even if you want a simple SimCity. There are other sim games on the Super Nintendo like Sim Ant, Earth, and even SimCity 2000. However, I am told that that one plays poorly. Even then, this one is considered to be the best of them all. Still, that's not great. In fact, I'll literally spell out the rating for this game. Yeah. Well, I do have one other Virtual Boy game, so I might as well review it. Galactic Pinball. This is one of the launch titles for the Virtual Boy. Believe it or not, this was considered to be the killer app by Nintendo. Yeah. Outside of the cool tile screen, you'll find nothing of worth here. It's just a space-themed pinball game. There are 4 tables to play. I guess this is supposed to be a pinball simulator, as the tables don't do anything crazy. The most I found crazy was a hidden Metroid minigame. However, I can't say that this is a good simulator because the physics suck in this game. It is very floaty, which I guess is done to match the space theme. The ball moves too fast to keep up with. I feel like I don't have any control of the ball at all. In fact, on this board, this keeps happening no matter what I do. Seriously, why? Who designed this? Each board doesn't offer much content either. I mean, Devil's Crush offers more content than this. Although I never played that game and that only has one table, but I can already tell you it's better than this. Heck, even Sonic Spinball is better than this. Admittedly, I did get slight enjoyment, but nothing really that fun. Just only get this if you have a Virtual Boy. Don't seek out the Virtual Boy for this. Global Defense, or SDI in the arcade, is definitely an interesting game. Earth is under attack from missiles from space. It's a space shooter, but it doesn't exactly play like one. You play as a satellite that shoots in all directions. The controls may be a little awkward since you have to hold a button to move, but it is manageable and you also don't need to move that often. The game is more about defending planets. You have to shoot down missiles and other enemies before they reach the end of the screen. There's a damage meter at the bottom, and let's just say you don't want it to get full. There are two segments in each level, and the first is the offensive segment. It's more like a space shooter and you can die in these segments. Then there's the defense segment, where it's more like Missile Command. You can't die here. But the damage meter from the offensive segment carries over and there's a lot of missiles here. This is definitely hard, but it is one of those fun kinda hard, like the Revenge of Shinobi. Like Rambo First Blood Part 2 on the same system, whenever you die you do get to reposition yourself. It's pretty chaotic, which makes it very fun. The only thing I didn't like is that you can only destroy things if they're on your crosshair. You can't just shoot in the general direction. Although the hit detection is generous. Honestly, if you have a Sega Master System, this is one that you should consider owning. Very simple yet very fun. Honestly, I think this game deserves a bit more attention. My father bought many racing games when we got the PlayStation 2, probably because he loves racing. Honestly, I don't really get into sports games that much, except racing games. One of the games that my father bought was Gran Turismo 3. This is not an arcade-style racing game. This game tries to be the ultimate racing simulator. So, how well does it hold up? The meat of the game is simulator mode. Here you have to buy cars, upgrade them, maintain them, test them, race them to win cups and leagues, and earn licenses to unlock more leagues. This is a pretty complex and deep system. It will keep you busy. However, it can be a bit slow paced for some. If this doesn't interest you, there is arcade mode, which is more of you select your car and track and off you go. If I had to be real, the presentation to me is an important part of racing games. This might be my nostalgia for the game, but I love the presentation of this game. The use of real life images and the menu music really makes this feel sort of relaxing and real, yet it's just so surreal to me. The music during races is just some licensed music. It is very dated, yet to someone who grew up in that era, it is timeless to me. The graphics are excellent for a PS2. The real life images do fit in nicely. They're not distracting. However, the real part of a racing sim is the racing itself. And, okay, don't get me wrong, this is good. However, if you want an accurate racing sim, you're better off with the Forza series on Xbox to start. And I can already tell you that the upcoming 7 game for PS5 will be better than this. But even then, you're better off with Assetto Corsa and Project Cars 2 than either Gran Turismo or Forza. However, at least the basic racing rules apply here, like braking to take turns, so this can still be pretty good. I still think the other elements of this game still pull this through to make this still a great game today, even if it shows its age a little. If you ever look at Amiga games, one of the games that comes up is Shadow of the Beast, along with Another World and Lemmings. The original Amiga game by Psygnosis and Reflection is known for excellent graphics for a game that came out in 1989. It really showed off what the Amiga could do, and it did prove that the Amiga was more powerful than its competitor, the Atari ST. With Psygnosis, there's actually a lot to talk about. Too much for this video, but they're most remembered for Lemmings and the Wipeout games. Anyways, Electronic Arts or EA made a deal with Psygnosis to port many of their Amiga games to the Sega Genesis. Kinda like Interplay with Another World. Anyway, Shadow of the Beast was one of those games that got ported to the Genesis. So let's just get to the game. But first, let's talk about the box art. This is the box art to the game. All Electronic Arts games on the Genesis have this unique design, and honestly, I still wish EA did this today because it looks cool. The actual artwork right here is from the original Amiga game. It was done by Roger Dean. Right here is just, a bit more of a standard spine. This is the Psygnosis logo, and this is Electronic Arts or EA Sega Genesis. Now, one thing about EA was apparently they were an unlicensed developer initially. They made their own box art and their own unique cartridges. However, Sega sued them, and I can't remember the exact details. I can't remember if EA won or if they just settled out of court, but eventually it ended favorably for EA, and eventually Sega just gave them official licenseship, but they still manufactured their own cartridges and box design. On the back here, it's just some description about like 8 megs of ultimate compression memory, 13 levels, which I'm not exactly sure if there are 13 levels. I can't feel like it was 8 or something, but anyways. Again, Psygnosis logo, one-player game, 16-bit cartridge. There can only be one master. Okay, enough for the stupid voice. 132 hideous monsters animated in Psygnosis quality graphics, which is, Psygnosis is known for quality graphics. I don't know if there's quite 132. I didn't really count, but it doesn't feel that high. It doesn't seem that high when playing the game. Anyway, let's just open the box here, and what was interesting is I was able to get a lot when I ordered this game. Again, this is what the cartridge looks like. The label is a bit worn off a little on the top. I have no idea what this does. It wiggles a little bit, and it looks like mine, I don't know if you can really see that, but it looks like some of the circuitries come off, unless it was always like that. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, again, it's different than a standard Genesis cartridge. But what was interesting was that I got the manual. Although one thing was that all of the box is in nice condition. For some reason, the insides don't, like, all the grips have broken off, unless it's always been like that. I don't know. It's just everything kind of flops around in there. So this is the manual. It even describes a story with this kind of cool painting here. Essentially, the story is that some young boy was kidnapped when he was very young. He eventually was transformed into some type of beast and was brainwashed and had all his memories erased. And he served the Beast Lord for like several years, and eventually he regained all his memories. And then he decided to go on a bit of a revenge quest. Anyway, that's the basic story. I don't know if I did a very good job describing that, but anyway, yeah, it's very typical here. It lists some other games you can get from EA on the back, like King's Bounty, the immortal Populace. What's weird is there's one game called Robocod, and then the one over here is called James Pond. I'm assuming it's referring to James Pond 2 Robocod, but anyway. But what's even cooler is that this straight up came with a poster. Isn't this cool or what? Well, this is kind of cool, but what's even cooler, or even maybe kind of dumber, is that when you turn around, it just becomes an advertisement for other EA games on the Genesis. These are some of their sports games. There's even John Madden Football. Yeah, John Madden was originally on the Genesis, although it was also on the PC, but anyway. A lot of games here are ports from their PC games, and some are ports from other companies, you know. There's another Psygnosis game being advertised called Fatal Rewind. I think it was called The Killing Game Show on the Amiga. There's Marble Madness. Here's a PC port, again, Populace. I'm not sure which ones are exactly PC ports and which ones are like original games. I just know a good chunk of them are PC ports. I'm assuming Road Rash was original, it wasn't a PC port. I know James Bond 1 and 2 here weren't... James Pond, sorry, were it was not their games. It was like from someone else. I can't remember the exact developers and publishers of the original. Anyway, it is kind of a cool relic from the time. And anyways, let's just get to the game. The first thing you'll notice about this game is the graphics. They are a bit rough and have less color than the original Amiga version, but this port has all the cool layers of scrolling. Also, the art style is just cool. There are many uniquely designed enemies. Many Psygnosis games look like this. Unfortunately, the port goes downhill from here. The music was awesome in the original Amiga version. The music in this port is terrible. The compositions are nice since they're based on the original Amiga game, but not only are the instrument qualities very poor, but for some reason the music is sped up. I mean, listen to this. Also, well, the developers kind of forgot to put in a punching sound effect when you hit the enemies. However, remember when I said that the original game was known for its graphics? Oh, well, let's just say it's not known for its gameplay. As you might have seen, your attacks don't have much reach and enemies fly at you. It's very easy to take damage. Now, you have a beefy life bar, and this is something you can get used to a little. But what makes it so bad is that not only do you have one life, but you have very few chances to get your health back. You do get a few weapons throughout the game, but they're only temporary, and the game makes sure to counter this to keep the difficulty up. What makes this worse is that, like Another World, you need a guide to figure out what to do. Some of these levels can branch out, and if you don't do the right thing, you can end up with a dead game. It doesn't help that the game is designed to appear open, but you need to complete it linearly. However, even with all of this, the game only takes 20 minutes to beat. The game is all memory, and even if you get a low explorative, you will die in this game. And even if you're willing to put up with all of this or use cheats in a guide, this is what you get for beating the game. Screw this game. If you really want to play this, just play the original Amiga version. This one for a while was probably the more accessible version, but the original Amiga version was included in the 2016 remake. Yeah, just don't bother with this. At least this version. Now, as a kid in the early 2000s, I was big into Nickelodeon. Like any 2000s kid on Nickelodeon, I was big into SpongeBob SquarePants. Technically that's a 90s show since it started in 1999, but it is most remembered in the 2000s. And it is still going. Now, my father obviously knew I was into SpongeBob, so when my father got a bunch of games when he got the PlayStation 2, one of them was Lights, Camera, Pants. Now, to be a bit more honest, I don't know if I had this game at the beginning, but it was definitely one of the very first PS2 games I played. Lights, Camera, Pants is the first of many SpongeBob games we will begin to see in these retrospectives. Let's get this out of the way, this is one of the best ones. The story is that SpongeBob and all the other main characters audition for roles in the Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy special. However, only one can make it in, so they all have to compete for the role. This is a party game. How this game works is that there are 8 areas with 3 games each. Whoever competes the best in all 3 games in an area gets a minor role for a scene related to the area. The games in the area are also related to the area's theme. So the Krusty Krab area games are themed after the Krusty Krab, and the movie scene is set in the Krusty Krab, if that makes any sense. However, whoever does the best overall with all minigames gets the role of the main villain, the Sneaky Hermit. This is actually a good way of rewarding the player for winning. The movie cutscenes can actually be pretty funny sometimes. It's possibly one of the very few SpongeBob products outside of the show to actually match the humor of the show. Very few SpongeBob games, even the good ones, rarely get the humor right. As you might have guessed, this game can be played up to 4 players, with this being a party game. One thing that is nice is that there isn't a large emphasis on luck. There's no board game to start, and many games require skill to win, although some of the mini games are very simple and those ones may require some luck. The games themselves are pretty fun. Some are a miss from me, but the majority are enjoyable. The only problem is that although whoever has the most points will win, the winning player has to pass 12,000 points to win. Otherwise, you have to replay some mini games. The most you can win in a game is 5,000 points, but if you don't win decisively, the other players can take away points from that. I imagine this can get annoying in multiplayer, unless these rules change. I don't know. I don't really have any friends. As a kid, I really enjoyed this game, and I still enjoy it today. That's more than what I can say for some of the other Nicktoons games we'll be seeing, and yes, there are some bad ones. The only other problem is the loading. There is a lot of it, and it can take a while. Even the saving takes a while. It's also worth knowing that I never had a memory card when I first got this game, so I never got very far. Although I did eventually get one, and I did eventually beat this game. There's also this cross-saving feature. Basically, if you owned other Nicktoons games by THQ that support cross-save, you could unlock some cool extra stuff. But all what it amounts to here is just trivial action figures. If you and your friends love SpongeBob and you want a party game that doesn't require luck, then check this game out. It's a blast to play. Hey, what's this game?
For the first time ever, Jimmy Neutron, Timmy Turner, Danny Phantom, and SpongeBob SquarePants join forces to battle the greatest criminal minds the Nicktoons universe has ever known. Nicktoons Unite!
So, what are we reviewing today? What? Do you guys remember my review of Tasmania on the Genesis? It's not very good. The controls and camera don't work well together. The level design is bad. However, it is one of those games where once you figure out what to do, it gets better, but not by much. Not to the point where you want to put up with the game. So yeah, not recommended. So if this is going to be a re-review, I think I can put up with your crap. Oh no, Tasmania on the Game Gear. The story is the same as the Genesis game, and the game's graphics are similar. Okay, to start off positive, there are some improvements over the Genesis version. To start, the camera is better. It's more zoomed out, which makes movement a little easier. However, it's still not very good. It's not enough sometimes, particularly in the auto-scrolling levels. There are at least no bombs in this game, and Taz no longer automatically eats stuff. You have to press down, so that's all good. However, the music, oh my god. The Genesis music was bad but tolerable. The music here is unbelievably bad. I mean, who thought this was okay? Now, to be a bit more fair, the graphics are kind of nice, although that is ignoring all the slowdown. Seriously, it gets really bad at many points in the game, and if you think this makes the game very hard, well, no. The game is actually fairly easy. The only problem is that you have to play at a near perfect level. It's just that playing at a near perfect level isn't really hard, but still, if you make too many screw-ups, you're done for. It doesn't make this game very fun, and the fourth level is near impossible. I can't do it, but judging from other YouTube videos, the rest of the levels are fairly easy. Very few of the levels are standard platforming levels. Most levels are auto-scrollers. Great. The walking speed is way too slow, not helped by the slowdown. Spinning is really the only way to get around, but now it drains your life bar. I mean, you use the spin attack to kill enemies to prevent them from draining your life bar, yet spinning drains your life bar. Doesn't that kind of defeat the purpose? A lot of these levels are not well constructed. Some of these levels are just terrible. In fact, this whole game is not well constructed. Also, this game only takes about 12 minutes to beat. What's weird is that in the pause menu, it gives you the option to quit the whole game. And you know what? That's the best part of this game. Thank you. Sonic's Classic is a very simple compilation. It was released very late in Genesis's life, 1997 in North America. It was likely a very low effort from Sega. The menu is reused from the 1995 six-pack compilation, and the music is from Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. Speaking of which, there are 3 games on here, Sonic 1, 2, and Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. All 3 of these games are great, although Mean Bean Machine might be a bit of an acquired taste. The only real loss here is that you can't play Sonic 2 and Knuckles if you put this on top of the Sonic and Knuckles cartridge. Although weirdly, it will recognize this as Sonic 1. The only other oddity I found is that if you hit the reset button, it will reboot the game you selected. It won't take you back to the menu. This compilation is nice, but it's not really worth getting considering that there's Sonic Mega Collection, which offers these 3 games and more. Atari 2600 games in the mid to late 80s are pretty interesting. The Atari 2600 at this point was pretty much competing with the NES, Sega Master System, and even the Atari 7800. So 2600 games did have to start becoming a bit more ambitious. One thing that is cool is the cartridge design. Pretty much all Atari 2600 games around that time look like this. They have this red outline, this very cool white text. The game has a black and white print, but there does exist color variants. So yeah, that's one thing that's really cool about this game is the cover design. The game itself is also pretty neat for the 2600. This is a pinball video game. There is only one board and it's just a high scoring game. The game's select switch doesn't do anything since Atari appeared to have wanted to move away from that and give the player actual menus. But there is a lot to do on this board. Much more than what I expected. The physics are also pretty good, which is surprising considering the hardware. This is rather ambitious considering this is the 2600. This game isn't mind-blowing, but it is more than what I expected from the hardware, which even in 86 was obsolete. Atari was really pushing the capabilities of the system to create games that can somewhat rival the new systems at the time. Honestly, I'm surprised an updated version didn't appear on the 7800, since this and some other 2600 games in the late 80s could have really helped the 7800.